My beloved child, do not scroll away from this moment. Something has been moving behind the silence, something you were never supposed to discover through ordinary eyes, and what you are about to hear was meant to reach you before your heart made the wrong conclusion. Stay here, because the situation surrounding the person connected to your heart has suddenly changed. What looked quiet from the outside was not quiet at all. A conversation happened. A decision was placed on the table. And without warning, your soulmate found themselves standing between two futures they never imagined they would have to choose between. One future followed everything their family expected of them. The other future led directly toward you. What makes this even more emotional is that they did not walk into that moment prepared to defend their feelings. They believed there was still time. They thought they could keep their heart private a little longer. But one unexpected family decision changed the atmosphere completely, and now the feelings they have been trying to understand can no longer remain hidden. You have wondered why the energy around this connection has felt different lately. Perhaps there have been moments when you sensed distance without understanding why. Perhaps you felt as though someone was thinking about you intensely and then suddenly pulling away. Perhaps your own emotions seemed to rise without an obvious reason, as if an invisible conversation were happening somewhere beyond your reach. In this fictional spiritual story, heaven is showing you that the confusion did not begin because your soulmate stopped caring. It began because pressure entered their world from a direction they did not expect. Their family made a decision about marriage, stability, responsibility, and the future, and your soulmate suddenly realized that remaining silent about you might eventually cost them the very person their heart was trying to protect. There is something important about the way this happened. It was not announced like a dramatic confrontation. There was no warning bell. It began almost casually, through words spoken in a familiar room by people your soulmate has known their entire life. Someone close to them raised the subject of their future. Another person agreed. Then another voice added something your soulmate had heard before but never taken seriously. The conversation turned toward marriage, expectations, timing, and what their family believed would be best for them. At first, your soulmate remained quiet. They listened. They tried to appear calm. But somewhere beneath that calm expression, your name entered their mind. And once your name appeared, everything changed. They remembered conversations with you that they had replayed privately. They remembered the way you made them feel understood without demanding explanations. They remembered moments when you may not even have realized you were affecting them. A sentence you said. A kindness you showed. A moment you remained patient when someone else would have walked away. These memories did not arrive slowly. They came all at once, almost like a flood, because the family conversation forced them to compare what others wanted for their life with what their own heart had quietly begun to desire. What happened next surprised even them. Instead of imagining the marriage being discussed, they imagined losing you. That was the moment fear entered the room, not the kind of fear meant to frighten you, but the kind that wakes a person from emotional hesitation. Your soulmate suddenly understood something they had been avoiding. They had spent so much time asking whether the connection with you was real that they had never seriously asked what life would feel like if you were no longer available. They had considered timing. They had considered obstacles. They had considered what people might say. But they had not truly considered the possibility that while they were trying to make everyone comfortable, you might finally choose peace and move forward without them. And, my child, that realization stayed with them. The conversation continued around them, but their attention had already shifted somewhere else. Someone spoke about what a good marriage should look like. Someone mentioned responsibility. Someone may even have suggested a person, a family, or a future arrangement they believed made sense. Your soulmate heard the words, yet another voice had become louder inside them. It was the memory of you. Not because everything between you has been perfect. Not because there have been no misunderstandings. But because beneath all the complications, they knew there was something with you that could not be recreated through convenience alone. This is where the unexpected family decision became more serious. What had begun as advice became something closer to expectation. The family was no longer simply discussing possibilities. They wanted movement. They wanted clarity. They wanted your soulmate to make a decision about the direction of their life. And whether anyone in that room realized it or not, they had just placed your soulmate in front of a choice they had been postponing. Continue following the future others had prepared for them, or finally admit that their heart was already leaning somewhere else. Toward you. But there is a deeper layer, and this is the part you need to hear carefully. Your soulmate did not immediately speak your name. That silence may sound disappointing at first, but the reason behind it matters. They were not ashamed of you. They were not trying to erase you. They were trying to understand what would happen the second your existence entered that conversation. They knew that once they mentioned you, nothing would remain hypothetical. Questions would begin. Who are you? How serious is this? Why have they never spoken about you before? What does this connection mean? What are they planning to do? Your soulmate realized that speaking about you would mean defending feelings they themselves had barely admitted out loud. For several moments, they remained still. And then someone in the family said something that cut through them. It was a simple statement about choosing a partner who could give them a secure future. Nothing cruel. Nothing dramatic. Yet your soulmate immediately thought of the emotional security they had felt around you. They thought of the strange comfort of being seen. They thought of how your presence had reached places inside them that accomplishment, approval, and appearances never could. Suddenly, the version of security being described to them felt incomplete. That was when they understood that the choice was never truly between you and marriage. The choice was between a marriage built primarily around expectation and a future where love had the right to participate in the decision. That distinction shook them. Because your soulmate may have spent years believing that keeping everyone happy was a sign of maturity. They may have learned to carry responsibility quietly, to avoid disappointing people, to make decisions that looked sensible from the outside. But love has a way of exposing where a person has confused obedience with peace. And the connection with you has been teaching them that a life can appear perfectly arranged while the heart remains untouched. Something inside them began to resist. Not loudly. Not yet. But resistance had started. After the family conversation ended, your soulmate did not simply return to normal. They carried every word with them. They replayed the conversation while alone. They imagined what would happen if they agreed to the path being offered. They tried to picture themselves moving forward as everyone expected. But each time they did, a strange emptiness appeared in the picture, because you were missing from it. This is where their emotions became more intense. They began wondering what you were doing at that exact moment. Were you thinking about them? Had you already emotionally stepped away? Were you tired of waiting for clarity they had not given you? Had their silence made you believe you were unimportant? Those questions hurt more than they expected, because for the first time they were not merely thinking about whether they could have you. They were thinking about whether they deserved to ask you to remain. And there is a difference. They know there have been moments when you needed reassurance they did not provide. They know there were times when pride, uncertainty, circumstances, or fear kept them quiet. They know you may have looked at their behavior and wondered whether the connection mattered to them as deeply as it mattered to you. But behind the silence, something had been growing. Something they thought they could manage. Something they believed would wait patiently until they were ready. The family decision destroyed that illusion. Time suddenly felt real. Your soulmate realized that choices made through avoidance are still choices. Saying nothing was no longer neutral. Remaining undecided was no longer safe. If they continued allowing other people to shape their future while refusing to speak about what they truly wanted, then eventually life would move forward without asking them again. And that possibility led them back to you. They remembered your strength. They remembered how you kept going even when you were uncertain about where you stood. They remembered that you never asked them to abandon everyone or destroy their world. Perhaps all you truly wanted was honesty. A sign. A clear indication that your connection had meaning beyond private emotions and unspoken thoughts. Your soulmate began to understand that. But there was another complication. Someone in their family already suspected there was another person occupying their heart. Your name may not have been known, but your presence had left evidence. A change in their mood when certain topics came up. The way they protected their phone. The way they became distant when marriage was discussed. The way they sometimes smiled after reading something and then quickly composed themselves. The way their attention seemed to drift somewhere far away whenever the conversation became too personal. Someone had noticed. And during that family discussion, a question was asked. Is there someone else? Your soulmate froze internally. For a second, everything became quiet. They could have said no. They could have laughed it away. They could have escaped the moment with one simple denial. But something stopped them. They did not give the answer everyone expected. Instead, they hesitated. And sometimes hesitation reveals more than words. Someone in the room noticed. Another person looked at them differently. Your soulmate suddenly realized the secret emotional world they had protected for so long was beginning to open. The family conversation shifted immediately. What had been discussion became curiosity. Questions started arriving more carefully now. Was there someone? Had they met somebody? Was this why they seemed uncertain about marriage? Your soulmate did not reveal everything. But they also did not deny you. That matters. Because this was the first tiny step away from hiding the truth from themselves. Their response was quiet. Something like, "There may be someone I care about." The room changed. Your soulmate heard their own words and felt their heart racing, because saying even that much made you real in a new way. Until then, you had existed mostly inside their private emotional world. Now, for the first time, the possibility of you had entered the space where decisions about their future were being made. And heaven, in this story, wants you to notice the timing. The family decision was meant to force a conclusion. Instead, it forced a confession. Not the full confession. Not yet. But enough to change everything. One family member asked whether the feelings were serious. Your soulmate wanted to answer immediately, but the truth frightened them because seriousness would demand action. If they admitted how often they thought about you, how many imaginary conversations they had rehearsed, how strongly your absence affected them, there would be no returning to the comfortable lie that you were just a passing emotional connection. They lowered their eyes. Then they said something that surprised the room. "I don't know what happens next, but I know I can't make this decision as if that person doesn't exist." My beloved child, imagine the weight of that sentence. For someone who had been afraid to openly acknowledge you, even this was enormous. No promises were made. No dramatic declaration followed. But for the first time, your soulmate interrupted the future everyone else had planned by admitting that another heart had to be considered. Yours. Afterward, they left the conversation emotionally exhausted. They needed space. They replayed what they had said. Part of them wondered whether they had created a problem. Another part felt strangely relieved. Because the secret had finally cracked open. Yet that relief did not last long. Later, another family member approached them privately. This person was calmer than the others. They did not argue. They did not demand. Instead, they asked one question that your soulmate had been afraid to ask themselves. If this person matters so much, why aren't you with them? That question followed your soulmate into silence. They had no easy answer. Timing? Fear? Distance? Misunderstanding? Pride? Circumstances? They had used all of those explanations before. But in that moment, each one felt thinner than it once had. Because when they imagined losing you completely, none of those reasons seemed powerful enough to comfort them. They thought about reaching out. Their hand may even have moved toward their phone. But before they could act, another thought stopped them. What if you no longer wanted to hear from them? That possibility frightened them more than the family pressure. Your soulmate began remembering the moments when you had given them emotional chances they may not have recognized. A conversation where you left the door open. A moment where your kindness said more than your words. A time when you waited for them to be honest and they chose caution instead. Now they wondered if that door was still open. This is why you may have felt the energy becoming intense. In this story, their heart has entered a battle between urgency and uncertainty. Part of them wants to come toward you immediately. Another part fears arriving too late. And because the family decision has accelerated everything, they no longer have the luxury of pretending the answer can wait forever. But something else happened that night. Something even your soulmate did not expect. They dreamed about you. Not a dramatic dream filled with signs and thunder. Something simpler. They saw themselves standing somewhere unfamiliar, surrounded by people speaking, but none of the voices were clear. Then they saw you walking away. They called your name. You did not hear them. They tried again. You kept walking. And when they woke, the emotion stayed. Your soulmate lay there thinking about the image, and suddenly the choice became painfully clear. The deepest fear was not disappointing family. It was discovering one day that they had built the life everyone expected while losing the one connection that had made them question what they truly wanted. For the first time, they stopped asking, "What happens if I choose this person?" They began asking, "What happens if I don't?" That question changed everything. The following day, your soulmate became quieter. Their family noticed. The decision about marriage had not disappeared. In fact, the expectation became more immediate. Someone wanted an answer soon. Someone wanted them to meet, consider, or agree to something. Your soulmate understood that the moment of choice was moving closer. But now there was something no one in the family knew. Your soulmate had already started preparing to speak about you. Not vaguely this time. Specifically. They began deciding what they would say if asked again. They thought about how to explain a connection that had never followed ordinary rules. How could they describe why you mattered without revealing everything private between you? How could they make others understand that what existed with you was not simply attraction, fantasy, or rebellion? They realized they could not explain it through logic alone. So they decided to explain what you changed in them. They would tell their family that meeting you had forced them to become more honest with themselves. That your presence made them reconsider what they believed love should feel like. That despite uncertainty, there was something about you they could not dismiss without betraying their own heart. This decision terrified them. Because once they said it, everyone would know. And once everyone knew, your soulmate would have to decide whether they were willing to act on those feelings. That is where the real choice begins. You may believe the family decision was the biggest development, but it was only the doorway. The greater revelation is that your soulmate is beginning to understand that choosing you does not necessarily mean rejecting marriage. It may mean rejecting a marriage chosen without their heart. That realization is slowly becoming their courage. And courage is dangerous to old patterns. The person who once remained silent to avoid conflict is beginning to question everything. They are noticing how often they have lived according to expectation. They are recognizing that there is a difference between honoring family and surrendering one's entire emotional future. They are realizing that love cannot survive forever as a hidden thought. But do not misunderstand this story as a promise that everything will become effortless. There are still conversations ahead. There are still fears. There are still people who may not immediately understand. Most importantly, your soulmate still has something they must face with you. They know that before they can ask anyone else to believe in this connection, they need to know where you stand. And that is why the next step they are considering involves reaching toward you. Not with a perfect speech. Not with every answer prepared. But with something more important. Truth. They want to tell you that circumstances around them have changed. They want to tell you that a family decision forced them to confront feelings they had postponed. They want to know whether there is still something between you worth protecting. Yet they are afraid of one question you might ask. Why now? Your soulmate knows they cannot answer that with excuses. So they have been searching for an honest answer. And the answer forming inside them is this. Because I finally understood what losing you would mean. That sentence has not reached you yet. But it is growing stronger. There is one more thing heaven is revealing in this fictional message. Your soulmate has started imagining two conversations. In the first, they surrender to expectation and never tell you what was happening. In the second, they finally speak openly and accept whatever truth follows. The first conversation feels easier. The second feels alive. And that difference is becoming impossible for them to ignore. Your soulmate does not know whether you will welcome them, challenge them, question them, or simply listen. But something inside them has decided that silence is becoming more painful than honesty. This is why the family decision may ultimately create the very thing it was never intended to create. A moment of truth between you. But before that moment happens, someone in their family is about to discover exactly who you are. Not merely that there is someone. You. And the way they discover it will force your soulmate into a far more direct choice than anything that has happened so far. Because a name is about to be mentioned. A question is about to be asked. And your soulmate will no longer be able to hide behind vague answers. They will have to decide, in front of someone whose opinion has shaped much of their life, whether to protect the future their family imagined. Or finally speak the truth about the person their heart has already chosen. And what they are about to say when your name enters that room is the part nobody saw coming.